I'd first like to say I'm really sorry that my wife Liz can't be here tonight. She's out of town on business because not only is she great moral support for me when I decide to stand up and make a fool of myself in public like this, but also she's a big part of this story because it goes back to the beginning of our relationship. We've been together for 25 years, married for the last 20 of those years. And you know, when you start out a new relationship, you talk to the other person and you kind of ask them questions to find out what their likes and dislikes are, and you're hoping that you mesh on some of those. And one of the things that Liz and I immediately discovered about each other is that we both loved books. And we both loved New York. We loved going to New York. So as a combination of those two things, one of the first trips that we took together was to the New Yorker Festival, which is held every fall. And they bring in, of course, being the New Yorker, great writers who come in and give readings and interviews. And then there's a breakfast with the New Yorker cartoonists on Sunday. It's a brunch event. I don't know if any of you have been to this, but it's a great thing. If you like books and you like New York, it's a great thing to do. So anyway, we went to the very first one, which was in 1999, and we loved it. I saw Tobias Wolff and Jhumpa Lahiri, two of my favorite writers, read on the Friday night of that festival. And that was how the New Yorker set up the festival. They had fiction writers, two fiction writers in different venues, so many fiction writers, but two at each venue read on Friday night. And then on Saturday, they had nonfiction writers being interviewed. And then on Sunday, as I said, they had this cartoon brunch. So the first year I had really loved seeing Tobias Wolff and Jhumpa Lahiri. And then after that, and I should add that Liz and I are very compatible because I love fiction. I only really read fiction. She loves nonfiction. She loves Nassim Taleb and Malcolm Gladwell and probably some other people write nonfiction, but I don't know who they are. And I love fiction. So it was perfect for us. We didn't argue. We'd get the program every year, and I would pick who we were going to see on Friday night. She would pick who we were going to see on Saturday, and then we'd go have the cartoon brunch. So about 5 years into this tradition of ours, I looked at the list for Friday night, and we went to buy it. You have to buy tickets for each event, and it was an obvious choice for me. Richard Ford was reading on the Friday night. He is my favorite living writer of everybody. So I was like, well, I have to see Richard Ford. Who else is reading with him? Annie Proulx. Okay, I was not a huge fan of Annie Proulx. I had only read one thing that she had written at that point in 1999. She was most famous at that point for having written a novel called The Shipping News. And a lot of people loved that novel, and several people recommended it to me. And I read about a third of it and couldn't get into it and couldn't get through it. So I wasn't a big fan of Annie Proulx, but she was reading with Richard Ford, so I was going to see her read. So we went into New York on Friday night, and we followed our usual routine, found a good place to eat dinner, not hard to do, and then walked to the venue, and it started at 7 o'clock, like tonight. And the dinner ran a little bit long, so we were walking, and it was the event was held in a little armory, an old armory on the west side near the Hudson River, I believe in the Chelsea neighborhood. But we're really hustling because we knew we were going to be cutting it close to get there on time. We finally get to the armory, and we come in this auditorium. They gave us programs that had little summaries of Richard Ford and Annie Proulx's careers, and we take our programs and we look in the auditorium, and it's packed already. The only place where there were seats available, there was a back row that was almost completely empty, and the row in front of that was completely empty. In the back row, there was only one person sitting in the second seat in from the aisle, and it looked to be an elderly lady, so we're like, okay, let's not disturb her and ask her to move over or anything. We'll sit in the row in front of her. So we did that. And we're looking at the program, and there's a couple minutes before Richard Ford is going to take the stage. And I'm telling Liz all about my favorite Richard Ford books and everything. And she says, well, what about this Annie Proulx person? And I said, well, she wrote The Shipping News. It won the Pulitzer Prize. I didn't like it. She said, I tried to listen to that book on audio tape, and I hated it. It was terrible. That's the only audio book I think I've ever stopped listening. And I said, yeah, I mean, I dislike The Shipping News so much that when I see an Annie Proulx story in the New Yorker, I just toss the New Yorker aside. I don't even look at it. And so we're sitting there, and this dutiful guy who's one of the young clerks that's working the event, he comes up the aisle with his headset on, and you can already figure out where this is going. He goes to the old lady sitting behind us and says, Miss Proulx, how would you like to be introduced when you come up to the stage? And I'm sitting there like, I know I was talking loud, I do anyway. And Liz talked loud that night. I thought, oh crap, she heard every word we said, and now she knows there's two people that hate her work sitting right in front of her. It must be horrible for her, but it's probably even worse for me because I'm really feeling about this big at that point. And then I'll tell you, the funny thing is, she went up, she read a story about a family hunting accident in Maine, and it was in the snow, and she did a great description of it, and it was so good. And probably because I had just dissed her, I became a huge Annie Proulx fan at that point. And then the following spring, the movie Brokeback Mountain came out, which was based on her story. And of course, she is mega famous ever since that. So that was my awkward pause.